A very good morning to you, Trinidad and Tobago. This is Talking Points here on WESN, the content capital. My name is Keaton Shaw. This morning we will be focusing on oil and gas. That's a bit later on in the conversation due to the Russian-Ukrainian war and the latest sanctions as well as the latest restrictions put in place by Western powers. This is actually going to have effects on the global market, which in turn will have impact upon Trinidad and Tobago's oil and gas sector as well as our trade. So we will be examining that later on. But this morning we need to discuss the breaking news that came out yesterday in relation to the resignation of Eugene Tyre from the investigative committee into the tragic Paria Fuel Trading Company Limited accident in which 4 divers lost their lives. And subsequent to that, the Prime Minister responded and gave us some even more surprising news in relation to that investigative committee. And we're going to analyze that this morning. But before we do, let me introduce my co-host, colleague, and good friend, Mr. Sean Michael Small. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Keaton. And just before we get into that, I'll just like to give one quick thing about the topic of yesterday, International Women's Day. And even that is not necessarily immune from being politicized. I know it's a political topic, especially globally, with regards to the what is equality, and caller even challenged us, but I'm just watching the political parties and I'm not really happy with how their stance is on it, and how it is too much about, well, this party is the right party and we have the right message for women, and like, this is, we're going a little bit too far now.
Not very subtle.
And to be honest, the issue with Paria and with the resignation of Mr. Tyre, I think it's the same thing. And you could argue that's how it's been for the longest while, and why should we settle for that just because it's almost like a tradition or an institution in and of itself right now.
Well, just very quickly in response to that, it's unfortunate that every single thing, down to a day in which we recognize the achievements and the contribution of women, has to become politicized. And in relation to this investigative committee, from the before this was even announced, it was politicized, and that is what we're going to talk about this morning.
Yeah.
And joining us this morning is our commentator on Wednesdays. She is the former Minister of Finance and attorney at law, intellect at heart, Karen Nunes Teixeira. Good morning, Karen.
Good morning to you, Keaton. Good morning to you, Sean, and good morning to you, our viewers on WESN. I say your viewers on WESN. Another rainy, dry season day. I don't know when the dry season is going to start, but it's good for the earth, it's good for our plants, and so that I can't complain.
Well, certainly, and with all the water restrictions that are in place, because WASA has now implemented their water schedule, rain is a welcome sign. Certainly is. Although it is confusing, Karen, because as you pointed out, we are in the dry season, and it's been quite rainy over the last couple of days. Speaking about dark and damp, the news in relation to Eugene Tyre's resignation from the investigative committee. Now, he was recommended by the Energy Chamber and he was accepted by the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, Stuart Young, to the committee. Now, it was then raised by the opposition leader that there lies a conflict of interest between the appointment of Mr. Tyre and Mr. Stuart Young, who is the minister. Mr. Stuart Young, an attorney at law before becoming minister, defended a board of directors of a certain company in relation to a contract that seemed to have gone sour, of which Mr. Tyre was a part of. Now, the resignation apparently came to a surprise to the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, as well as the Prime Minister. And it is quoted, according to Mr. Tyre, "I was asked by the Energy Chamber to be their representative on the investigation committee, to commit 45 days gratis, and to bring and bear my 40 years of technical and managerial experience in the energy industry, with particular interest in safety and process safety leadership, which I agree to. It appears that the good of country is subservient to the shenanigans of a few. I have thus taken the decision to withdraw from the investigative committee. I wish the committee members Godspeed with the onerous and supremely important task." Now, first of all, he failed to address. We can make the argument he has done the right thing because there was indeed a conflict of interest. But he also failed to address that conflict of interest in his resignation letter. Instead, in my opinion, which is something he should have done, I do not think it was best to come out and say the country is subservient to the shenanigans of a few. I think that in itself is already politicizing and in a way concretizing the point that the opposition leader was making. Sean, what are your initial thoughts on that?
I'll just say that as much as, and there's a part of me that doesn't want to agree with you, to think that it's fair for him to say that, but you're right. Just because it's equal, you know, if somebody made a member of my family, I can't just murder a member of his family. We're both guilty of murder, we both should be prosecuted. So, to be fair, I think both the opposition leader and how Mr. Tia communicated was bad, was very bad with regards to what you just said, politicizing the issue. Do I necessarily, it's kind of strange, but since he's resigning at the end of the day, since he is conceding to her position, he's not debating her. I don't care as much personally as with regards to the opposition leader's communications. Because, okay, you're out, fine. Maybe though, it would still be better for you to go out a little bit more gracefully and not try to get a shot in on the way out. However, let's put it this way. The words, her response to Mr. Tia, I have reached the point where I cannot wait to say the same thing about her. Good riddance. Because I'm just going to go a little bit hyperbolic here and just say, I'm just fed up with this nonsense.
Well, that's extremely strong views, but this is where I now turn to the attorney at law who's contributing to the discussion this morning. Karen, the conflict of interest was raised. Now, in all fairness to Mr. Tia, if you were to look at conflict of interest between government ministers who may be attorneys, or attorneys generally, and those within state boards or state representatives, then I don't know how you're going to actually segregate the responsibilities of both individuals without actually inflicting some sort of conflict. Many a times they're all linked together, and that's the thing. So first of all, if you may just comment on this conflict of interest, if you think that the opposition leader was correct in raising the issue and pushing the issue to the extent now that Mr. Tia has not only resigned from the committee, withdrawn from the committee, but also to the extent where he has made the statement that the country is subservient to the shenanigans of a few.
And he sounded like a peeved child who's having a little bit of a tantrum. And that in itself, without it being his intention, shows that he should not be part of that committee, because the committee is not, in my view, just about technical expertise. The committee that they've set up is to make sure there's transparency, there's accountability, and at the end of the day, the justice is done. And that his response was really tasteless on his part, especially to have written it. Just one thing, you say something off the top of your head,
right, yeah,
because and then you regret it. But to actually put pen to paper and release that is to tell you, in my view, that he would have been a poor choice, based not on his technical expertise, but his ability to maintain an objectivity that is necessary. I also would say that was followed up again by the Prime Minister's response to it. The Prime Minister seemed angry and upset, so unstatesmanlike. Taking things so personally. And I will say that although Sean says he can't recall, I forgive him, he has too much on his mind. But we did have a conversation yesterday evening.
I remember some of it,
and I said to him, because of the history of this government, with the AV drilling issue, with who was in the room, the president, the AV drilling issue, why didn't they take the matter to court, and other matters of that nature, that the country has lost confidence in the government's ability not to be transparent and accountable. So I think the Prime Minister made the right call to have it heard in public and a commission of inquiry, especially since the independent contractor is putting the blame on Paria, and he has lost his only son, and he seems to have the deep pockets enough to fight the government. So I think that the right thing to do for the country is to have the commission of inquiry, and it's unfortunate that the comments both of Mr. Tia, whether he felt entitled or not to feel angry, you can be angry, but his comments, and followed by that of the Prime Minister, is so inappropriate, and unfortunately, unintentionally shows that perhaps maybe he should not be on that committee at all.
Well, and that is actually where now segue. Just before we step into the repercussions of Mr. Tia's resignation in relation to what the Prime Minister announced yesterday, not only, at least in my opinion, and simply based off of what Karen is stating, does this politicize the issue even further? It seems as though what Mr. Tia is doing is also showing that the opposition leader was right. It seems as though Mr. Tia has taken a side when in itself he's supposed to be independent of any sort of. But does it also his comments also prove that the energy minister was wrong?
Here's the thing. It does not prove that he is for the government. It does prove that he is against the opposition. It also does prove that he will allow his personal views to interfere with the manner and the communication. It does not matter if he is objective. The communication suggests he is objective. His choice of words suggests he is, unobjective. So what Karen said is correct. The method that he used, right? If you want to protect your reputation as someone who can be objective, then you do not go and take a partisan shot at your accuser, because the microscope should and is on you in this situation, whether, justifiably or not, fairly or not. What you say matters, and yes, you're on the way out. So to me, it doesn't matter as much, but I cannot deny that I cannot say how he handled things was in line with him being objective. I have to agree with what both you and Karen are saying. He seems very anti-opposition. So it questions his objectivity. He doesn't need to be linked to the government. Once you question his objectivity, that's enough. That's enough to say, whoa, maybe it is best for you not to be there, as Karen said.
Well, it seems so. But now let's take a look at the repercussions. I mean, apart from the entire nation now being rather shocked and surprised at the circumstances, I do feel even more sorry for the families involved, because they're sitting now having to say goodbye to their loved ones and pay their final respects, while the issues surrounding the circumstances to their demise is now being politicized even further. But taking a look at the Prime Minister, now the Prime Minister has actually now finally done something in his position in relation to this entire incident. The Prime Minister has now actually come out and taken some sort of action in his capacity, when for the majority of the part over the last 2 weeks, he has been, week and a half, he has been rather quiet, only once expressing his condolences to the family in relation to this. He's actually done something now. What has he done? He's instructed the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries to scrap the investigative committee. He's also stated that there will no longer be any foreign experts needed or involved in any sort of investigations regarding this. Instead, he has stated that on behalf of the Cabinet, that there will be a commission of inquiry in relation to this, a 3-member commission of inquiry in relation to this. He says because even before they had done the job, the population had been so riled up into not accepting any work that they have done, that is a waste of time now. And it seems as though the Prime Minister, in his comments, his statements, is missing the entire point.
I don't know if I would say that.
As to what, just based off of that, it seems as though he's missing the point as to why the nation is riled up, and to a certain degree disregarding the actions on the part of his minister, and by extension his deputy, whilst to a certain degree blaming the nation.
But I will ask you this, Keaton, before Karen answers. Did you have a problem with the names mentioned so far?
Initially, I did not. And in relation to that conflict of interest, I did not have a conflict. I didn't necessarily, in my opinion, see a conflict of interest.
If it's reasonable to say that the panel was not necessarily constituted badly, we don't know who the international experts would have been, right? Then there is some merit of truth to what the Prime Minister said. Again, I don't know if I would necessarily like how he said it, but there's some merit of truth to say before they even began the work, they've more or less been discredited. before anything has been shown, proven, or what have you. The entire panel, not just one individual.
And that's what I'm about to come to know. I think that the Prime Minister has now actually focused on the entire panel. I think the issues surrounded mostly the appointment of Mr. Tia. Yes, there were questions as to why a lawyer was actually heading the committee due to the questions of liability. But in itself, I think the entire issue surrounded Eugene Tia's appointment. Again, he was nominated by the Energy Chamber. We need to bear that in mind. Whether or not there was any sort of influence on the position of the minister, we aren't too sure about that. You can never tell in these circumstances, but it's stated that he was actually recommended and nominated by the Energy Chamber, and the minister accepted this. Karen, you have made the argument before this program that a commission of inquiry was needed, that the investigative committee was not necessary, and it would have been more, I guess, fruitful if there was a commission of inquiry in the first instance.
Yes, because I think there's a lack of confidence and a lack of trust in the national community. You could see that played out with the whole issue, as I said, with the whole, which I'm not taking any sides. I'm not expressing any opinion on it at all. But the whole set of sort of secrecy, the cloud of secrecy about the person in the room with the president, and not wanting to reveal that information, the AV drilling when the senior counsel says go to court and ready to go to court, and the government not wanting that. So there's a lot. So I think a commission inquiry is a good thing for the government, because it's something that the government should encourage, the transparency, which is what it is about, I think. But my concern is that what will happen, and you can quote me on this now, the commission inquiry will be heard, and I am not hopeful that the results will be released, because what will be said is that there has been findings of criminal wrongdoing, and the matter is going to be passed on to the DPP, who is severely understaffed by about half, and this is an ongoing problem. Send it to him, and that it will gather dust, because he cannot move forward, because he does not have the manpower to do the necessary investigation to charge anybody. Why do I say that with such confidence? CL Financial. Yes, it's personal to me, but I will never forget the day, because it was the same weekend that the Prime Minister Manning had died, and I had come on to discuss the CL Financial Commission, and I said to them that they are not going to release that they are going to find some reason not to release it. The Prime Minister is going to be very angry and act very angry, because some of the people who they have found to be, the ones who are most liable are friends on both sides, and that he is going to make a lot of hullabaloo of it, and then it's going to be put up on a shelf to gather dust, and nothing will happen. And that was 2010 or 11, or whenever it would have been. No, it would have been when he had become Prime Minister himself and the commission had finished. So you see, I don't have any confidence. I have confidence that they will have the commission. I have confidence they will say that they can't release it because it has to go to the DPP. I have confidence the DPP is understaffed, and he will not, as he has not been able to deal with CL Financial. That's my view on it.
Well, now we go back to the Prime Minister's comments. It seems as though the Prime Minister never intended to have a commission of inquiry in the first place, but now it seems as though he's been put between a rock and a hard place, and that needs to happen.
Here's the interesting thing. He did not try to defend the investigative committee. He did not try to defend the plans.
Actually, he went after the opposition more than anything.
Right, but my point is, it seems that he is frustrated, right? Now, to be fair, the reason why we have such partisan politics is, to some extent, the government's fault as well. It takes two to tango in this. It's not as though they're constantly inviting the opposition to things and the opposition is just saying no. Now, is the opposition being a little bit more, opposing for the opposition's sake than when Dr. Rowley was the opposition leader? Maybe not. It all depends on how you want to view those things. I'm sure some callers might debate that. But I will say this. The fact that he did not try to hold firm, stubbornly to the previous position and move straight to the Commission of Inquiry, I think it was basically, look, You want to argue? Fine. Let's just go to the next step. I am too tired and I do not care about this nonsense. I honestly think that he himself is frustrated by the whole situation of how it played out, the pathetic business as usual politics. Well, I'm the opposition, so I must find a way to oppose this because it has to be wrong because the other party did it. It doesn't, there's no judging it based on the merits of what it is.
Was the opposition, now bear in mind, again, I've made my opinion clear that I firmly believe that the conflict of interest initially didn't matter, but now that we're seeing the comments on the part of Mr. Tia, it clearly shows that he should not have been on the committee. But I don't think the opposition was wrong for raising the issue.
So remember, my views on Mr. Tia is his statements don't necessarily link him as a government supporter. He's just against the opposition. It questions his objectivity. I'm not going to link them together. If other people want to do that, that's fine, because it's academic at this point, it doesn't matter. And here's the thing, I agree with you. I agree with you that it is right for the opposition to raise the points. The problem is how they raise the points. And it works both ways, for the government and for the opposition, right? So the communication now, the Prime Minister probably should not have attacked the opposition in that way. He could have vented his frustration to some extent, but he should have limited it and be more reasonable and more stately with his communication.
It seems as though him attacking the opposition also, again, strengthens the opposition leader's points.
I wouldn't necessarily say that. Because again, to me, his choice being so quickly, to me, it reads more of frustration with the opposition and wanting to just cut to the chase, because what the opposition is saying for the most part just does not matter to him, right? If it was that important to have Tia on a panel, right, then he would have given some sort of fight to keep the panel.
But clearly it does matter to him, though. I mean, Karen, what are your thoughts on that? Sean says it doesn't matter, and I think it does matter.
Say, and this is just, of course, I don't have any information that has been given to me. I said nobody spelled mouse and envelope to me. But you don't know all the facts. You don't know the real reason why the Prime Minister decided to go that route. Because I think one of the things that may have influenced him, having been on the inside, is that the independent contractor seems to have deep pockets. It's his only son that has died. He has information, and he was prepared to pursue that matter. So that however the government wanted to go ahead with its own inquiry, it seemed that the independent intended to go forward with his own matter and get his own expert witnesses. And so, and the other point I want to make is, you are the Prime Minister. There is no need for you to behave in that crass manner. Mm-hmm. You have made a decision. It's you getting on like a spoiled child. Well, it's not. You think it's the opposition. You do not know the facts. Mm-hmm. You think it's the opposition, and that's what you want you to think. Yes, the opposition may have had a hand in it, but maybe it's the information that the opposition has, which they are getting from the independent contractor, that will, if that matter goes to that inquiry, it may very well come out with make the government look bad. Then it's done behind closed doors, whilst the matter that the independent contractor intends to pursue, as he has said, it will not be behind closed doors. It will be in the full glare of the public, because it will be in the court, and he can bring on his own independent contractors as well, independent experts, as well as he has access to the information, because it was his company that was contracted to carry out the work.
So when they look at it,
I think it has much more to do than simplifying it to the contractor. And the Prime Minister, in his response, should not have responded in the manner that all he did was make it clear that he could not take, that he was not being objective about
this point.
it.
He can still pursue it. If the contractor believes that he has a legal case against the government, he can pursue it. Now it is up to the attorney advising him whether or not to go ahead based on the commission inquiry.
If it's not going to stop the contractor from pursuing it, however he sees fit, I don't necessarily see how this move helps on that front. Now, I will say this. Okay, I will concede the point that the Prime Minister, again, should have communicated better.
Because he's pushing partisan politics.
Right, but it started with the opposition with regards to the political side of things.
Okay, now, hold on, and bear with me here, because we do have to go to the break. We have our guests waiting. Regardless of where it started, regardless of where it doesn't matter where it starts. If it started with the opposition, if it started with a senator, if it started with LMCS, it doesn't matter. You as Prime Minister and you as leader recognize that there is an issue. You recognize that, yes, okay, the Prime Minister may be frustrated, but the nation themselves are even more frustrated. We know that the Prime Minister's job is not easy. We know there's a lot to handle, a lot to take on.
So,
but again, he continued to push the partisan narrative.
So I will concede the point, because this is not the first time he's done this, where he's fallen for the opposition traps of going down into the mud. And he himself is a mudslinger, like we have seen many times before. But I'm just frustrated as hell with the level of argument from the opposition. And basically, the man is out. You won. You won in this situation, technically speaking, based on what you wanted to achieve, right? Or at least what is implied you wanted to achieve. You want to take a gun, he's gone. You need to compound the situation, because to me, you could say, you put both of them in the same boat. The whole thing was classless. It was completely classless. And the problem is, this situation, with these 4 men dying in this unfortunate way, I take a little bit extra umbrage for the lack of class from our political class this time, right? All the money that's gone from corruption, that's one thing. 4 men died in a horrific manner, and the lack of class and the politicizing of it has me completely incensed.
Which is why we have always stated that we have completely lost the entire point of the entire situation. And even before this committee was put in place, it was politicized, and we've completely lost, in that regard, we have lost respect for the family and to a certain degree the nation, and because the entire nation is hurting. And I'm just like to conclude, perhaps it may have been better should the government worked with the opposition, or the opposition worked with the government. I don't think the opposition in any way recommending that Tia be gone and we bring in a member from the FBI was any valuable point or a point of substance. No, I don't think that was good.
Well,
on their
they
part.
didn't only list the FBI, to be fair.
Okay, so they listed another individual, but another entity.
Yes.
But we can't comment on that. But I'm just simply stating, if there was some sort of consultation or work or unity between the opposition and the government, the frustrations of the nation and perhaps the frustration of the Prime Minister would not have been compounded any further than it already is.
That is true.
Anyway, folks, let's take a break here on the program. We've left our guests waiting long enough. When we return, we need to speak about the oil and gas sector, simply because there is a lot going on in relation to not only our gas production, but in relation to the global market. And, well, is there tough times ahead for Trinidad and Tobago? That question in itself may be a rhetorical question. But to what degree are we going to see uncertainty or perhaps an opportunity? When we return, we get into that discussion. Stay tuned to Talking Point here on WESN, the Content Capital.
Burning questions, urgent topics. Welcome back to One on One, the show where we tackle the most current and pertinent subjects that are affecting all citizens, where we ask the hard questions and have in-depth conversations. What separates One on One from other talk shows is that the conversation stems from a younger perspective on topics that affect the fabric of our society. One on One, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. on WESN Content Capital.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andre.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
It may seem like the hardest thing to do right now, but we all need each other to wear a mask, wash our hands, watch our physical distance, and stay at home. We need you safe. Together we can make the difference. Together we can curb the spread of COVID-19. So let's be responsible in our actions. The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
Welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN, the content capital. Joining Karen via Zoom, Sean and myself here on the program is no stranger to the conversation. We've welcomed him a few times before, and it's necessary now that we have his knowledge and expertise with us to help us better understand the situation that's unfolding. And right here in our shores, we may not be in the midst of the war, but the repercussions of the war certainly will impact upon our economy and trade. Dr. Roger Hossain is with us via Zoom. Good morning, Dr. Hossain.
Good morning, and thanks for the invitation.
Yes. Dr. Hossain, thank you very much for joining us. Now, getting straight into the conversation, oil and gas production here in Trinidad and Tobago has actually declined. If we look at the Ruby field, for example, that was initially touted to produce roughly 16,000 barrels a day. Thus far, it's producing only about 4,000. The finance minister indicated that Trinidad and Tobago will be back to producing 80,000 barrels of natural gas a day. We're nowhere near that. In the meantime, across the world, we're seeing the Russian-Ukrainian war drive the prices of oil and gas up. Now, it's rather unfortunate that we have to look at opportunity from war, but with the prices going up, that would have meant good news for Trinidad and Tobago. At the same time, it would have also driven inflation up. But even though the prices have gone up and our production has dropped, is there still some sense of positive news for Trinidad and Tobago?
Of course. If it is you sell 5 doubles at $5 for one, and you then sell 5 doubles at $8 for one, of course the increase in the price will be better for you if it moves from $5 to $8. So immediately the rise in price benefits the Trinidad and Tobago economy on the one hand. The dilemma or the challenge for the Trinidad and Tobago economy is that our production levels are not where we would like them to be. But there are engineering reasons for that in part. It could be policy errors in some regard, because if you want to get more oil and gas, you have to obviously drill. And if you don't drill enough, you won't get enough oil and gas down the road. So, but we need to be cautious and careful as always in Trinidad and Tobago. And I think the Prime Minister's comments last night were sort of in the right direction, in the sense that, yes, we are getting this price boom based on an unfortunate situation, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, coming at the expense of significant amount of civilian lives. We are getting this price boom, and any surplus or any improvement in revenue, we should make use of it.
Well,
but there is a bigger picture here. Just give me 30 seconds. There is a bigger picture here. And the picture is, why do we always seem to, since 1956, and even before I presume, be waiting on these oil price and gas shocks to bail out the economy? And the question emerges whether or not there are other things besides oil and gas that people export anywhere else in the world that we could possibly put more emphasis on and export. You get the impression that if the oil and gas sky is falling, from a production perspective, that will be the end of chicken licking. And I think that it has to be more than that. It has to be more than that, because at some point in time, we will have to face the reality that we are a mature hydrocarbon area, and that the world, with this situation in Europe is not going to ever let itself become so dependent on hydrocarbons and there will be timelines now by which they would have to be weaned off Russian gas and Russian oil and hydrocarbons in general. So we keep getting enclosed in these smaller boxes of economic activity. So I just wanted to close off of that in terms of the specific question. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
I want to be able to respond to what Dr. Hussain just said. Because yes, one would think that higher prices in oil and gas mean a better economy for Trinidad. But we have to bear in mind that Trinidad and Tobago Petroleum Holding Limited closed down the refinery. The supplemental petroleum tax was increased. In other words, instead of starting at $50, if it was in on land exploration, which is Touchstone mainly, that they would pay less taxes there. So we get less taxes there. But we have to remember that also on the other end is Paria. So if prices of oil and gas unrefined, I'm talking about oil, it's unrefined, over $100, $120, and they seem to think it's not going to go down in a hurry, then aren't we paying much more to import the fuel, the same fuel that we used to refine, aren't we then with one hand getting, but the other hand taken away? And my understanding is that although the government put in place the legislation for the subsidy, they have not implemented the subsidy. The higher the price of oil, the greater the subsidy. So on one hand, we're not producing enough oil. On another hand, we're importing not oil, the refined fuel and refined gas, which is must be costing us much more. On the other hand, the government is still subsidizing that. And fourthly, we still have a bond holding with the Trinidad and Tobago holding company, which has to be paid. So to what extent is Trinidad and Tobago in the context of all those facts? And if we go to natural gas, LNG 1 finally had the government, instead of actually admitting that LNG 1 was a failure, decided that they're going to combine all three when it was all four at the beginning. So with a much lower production in natural gas, very little coming from oil, importing the oil, retaining the subsidy, and having to pay the bond from the holding company, which is why I understand OWTU could not go forward with the refinery sale. I don't think my point to that is that I don't think we have much to celebrate with regard to the higher prices in oil. And you know, of course, that America, who used to be our major importer of natural LNG, is now, and Biden said it, he said we are net exporter. So what is going on in Russia is not affecting us. Germany has said, okay, we stopped Nord Stream 2, but we're not going to stop importing a natural gas for electricity, for power, for transport. So, you know, and at the same time, because of the supply chain management, because of the increase in fuel and so on, it is going to even increase food inflation even more. So I don't see much of a winner in this whole situation, Dr. Ali.
Well, Dr. Hussain...
Dr. Roger Hussain, sorry.
Dr. Hussain, in responding to what Karen is suggesting...
He knows I would come, he knew that I would have something to say, but I genuinely feel that way, that we don't have that much to celebrate Dr. Hussain, you know? And so when we start talking about diversity, I don't even think that this situation really spells out a need for diversification. It's been there all along. And I don't think we're getting that much out of what's going on right now.
So, do I respond now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Please do.
Yeah. So, it's hard to disagree with what Karen said there, because there are a series of facts that we know for some time now. You know, and it's sometimes it's frustrating talking about the Trinidad and Tobago economy. So the word diversification may come up, and you know, apart from what's going on in the Point Lisas area there with those 10 Chinese firms that are coming to set up shop, the emphasis and effort on the non-energy export side of the economy is too few and far in between. And it's like going for a casual stroll around the savannah and talking to every person that you meet. You will take forever to finish the journey. And so, but at some point you have to start. And you have to start this journey in a structured, organized way. And that is where I think I would add on to what Karen said, in that the structural flaws in the economy are there. There is no disputing the decrease in oil, the closure of the refinery, in my judgment, under good cause. There is no disputing the fall in natural gas. There is no disputing the fact that we have a mature area. The events in Russia would also affect us via the rise in food prices, because supply chain and logistics would be disrupted even more. We import a lot of wheat from the global economy, and if it is the Black Sea Basin area is the second largest grain loading area in the world, and if it is disrupted, as it would be now, we know that a bushel of wheat has gone up about 28% in the last 2 weeks. All those things will filter back to Trinidad and Tobago economy. The question is, what do we do? I think we should talk a little bit more about what do we do and how do we start, and who says when do we start? Because you get this impression that people like me and Karen would talk, and we would offer our most honest, best advice to whoever would listen, and then you hear the economic growth rate comes out for another year. Let's say 2019, you hear negative. 2020, you hear negative. 2021, you hear negative. 2022, you are hearing it won't be 5.7%. It could now be about 3%. And it's just a block of errors, one after the other, all based on the same weak foundation. So logically, and I am a creature of logic, logically, the strategy must involve modifying this base from which this structural building has to take place. And if the base is weak and creating all these problems, the only way to fix the problems moving forward is to fix your base. And I'm saying, and we have said many times in many different places, that to me, the fundamental problem is the structural base on which we work and plan and think and live is one that is way too dependent on energy and needs a stronger, more focused diversification plan that could insulate the economy from negative shocks in the energy sector, because not all the shocks would be positive. Just as you have price going up, you could have price going down, and we certainly have negative production shocks. We need to move the economy there. So it wasn't done in the time period 2000 to 2021. It's gone. Let's do it now. What's stopping us? Who is the person that we need to speak to action it immediately, to say, okay, I am going to form a 5-man team, and in 3 months' time, we will respond to the population on where are the lowest hanging fruits in terms of non-energy export diversification. And in 6 months' time, we are going to execute on this strategy. Who makes that decision? Why are they not making the decision? And what can we do to get them to make the decision?
Well, Dr. Hossain, now I do have to ask that you're saying that we do need to shift the base or the foundation of our economy, and I agree with that. The details, of course, is very complicated. But I do have to ask, with current events, not only do we have external shocks, but we also actually have internal shocks here. Last year, we had an accident with the new plant at Naikwan. This year, now, Paria has the diving accident where the board of Paria is under question. Are we positioned that our energy sector, which unfortunately we are still somewhat reliant on, and there's the argument that we should use what oil and gas money we have left or that we might earn from these new higher prices as the money to invest in the new foundation? But do we also have to be worried about the management of our current energy sector now where we just have a commission of inquiry because the political ramifications of what's going on has gotten potentially out of hand?
Well, Dr. Hussain, I'd like to add to my colleague's question in relation to the management, because the Prime Minister yesterday, in conversations with the Prime Minister, indicated that they're now having to review the subsidies in relation to oil and gas, stating that we cannot look at this as just positive news. The population cannot be insulated from this hike, and that the government may actually need to borrow if they are to keep the subsidies. So in relation to the management aspect of that as well, I mean, is this now, again, adding to the positive aspect or the negative aspect as to what's to come?
So with relation to the situation in the energy sector, and you mentioned the situation at Naikan and the situation at Paria, those are all manageable things. If you have the right governance structure in place and people follow the right steps, those things could be avoided to the best of my knowledge. As regards the subsidy, it is possible with the rise in energy prices that the government would have to find money to put towards the energy subsidy. But that's not something new to me in the sense that when I look at transfers and subsidies and the relationship with debt, to me, it looks at, like when I look at the numbers, that we are borrowing to finance transfers and subsidies anyway. So I don't think that's any novel statement. If you look at the data, it is very clear. In fact, one of the most frustrating things, and I am frustrated when I look at these numbers, is to see a situation from 2000 to 2021 where all of the energy rents have been accounted for in terms of aggregate expenditure on transfers and subsidies. It supersedes aggregate revenue intake from the energy sector. You could twist and turn that however you want. At the end of the day, when I look at those two numbers, all of the energy rents is gone and transfers and subsidies have superseded it. And we also have a debt of 130 billion. So the steps taken to remove the energy subsidy, I support that. And one of the things I also support the implicit comment by the Prime Minister where he said, well, at some point in time, we have to come off of all these subsidies. The economy cannot run like if it is in La La Land or airy fairy land, because where will we get this money? So right now, the debt to GDP ratio, and Karen may probably correct me here, they say it's 89.2%. I suspect it's about 93% now from when I work out by numbers. And if we continue like this, what are we going to do? The debt per capita moved from 35,000 per person in 2010. It's now about 107,000 per person. So do we continue to to walk along this Rapunzel pathway and let debt per person rise to 170, 180,000 per person and continue the subsidy? No, that makes no sense. Take the hard way now. Fix the economy by structural adjustment. Just as I think it was Prime Minister Manning did in the NAR, and then followed by Prime Minister Manning in the period 1986 to 1993. We made some tough decisions, but what happened in the economy in 94 to 98? Best period of growth. Best period of growth without dependence on the energy sector, and that's what we want. And if then it is so difficult, go back and look at what were the structural reforms that were done from 1986 to 1992-93. See what lessons can be learned and implement them in this time period. Take a simplistic approach. So one of the things that we may have to consider at some point in time is whether or not to devalue the dollar. It was done then and it worked well. And when I say it worked well, I look at the non-energy export balance and it improves. So, but the point is, what is the plan? What is the plan to diversify the economy and move us out of this 6-year period of depression? I sometimes hear people say recession and I get upset. We are not experiencing a recession in Trinidad and Tobago. We are experiencing a depression. And it has been 6 back-to-back years of consecutive negative GDP growth. What is the deep-rooted, firmly built, technically sound plan to move this economy until the medium term, let's say 2030, with a non-energy export base that is strong and with a plan that is resilient? Where is the strategy? Because Vision 2030 is not the strategy.
But I say that one of the things that I feel that could be done, and we see, for example, the Ministry of Tourism has added culture, which was not part of it, so recognition that part of our tourist product is culture. Yet we have this big launching of sport tourism, which I simply can't understand. But what I think is important is that you need to have a more structured, a more holistic approach. Opening up a panyard here, opening up something up in Parliament there, you're not building a product and telling the nation, listen, we are going through a diversification and we are going to be focusing on developing culturalism. We're going to do it this way, we're going to do it that way. And the idea of a plan, I mean, Dr. Hussain, with all due respect, when they started the economic board, which Dr. Terence Farrell headed up, within about 2 years, it fell apart. And every plan, remember the plan for COVID, for Laventil, to see how you could help them? Whatever come out of that. They are plans, they say if you want something not to happen, it's to say that you're going to have a plan. So we have passed the part of planning. We need implementation. And as one example of that, if I may give an example, ease of doing business. In 2014, we were 68 out of 100 and something. I know they have squashed it for a while because of some issues they're having in the Middle Eastern countries. But we were 68 out of over 100 and something countries. We have dropped to 104 consecutively for 3-4 years. Somebody asked me, well, why can't anything be done? Well, one, in the Corruption Perception Index, surprisingly, when you look at public sector, one of the ways in which you can show is red tape. So it can be used as a mechanism for red tape. But more importantly, in Jamaica, when they brought in the IMF, not on a standby arrangement, but a special arrangement, they were able to move, starting up a company, beginning registering and starting up a company within 3 days. So you ask, what is the reason why it's not being done? There's not the political will, there's not the political leadership or directorship, there's not the funding provided for it. And if I may be so, I believe I can quote the Prime Minister when he said, almost offhand, diversification, always talk about diversification. So if I am to take those words to mean anything, he clearly is not a champion of it. But what you do need is a clear, holistic, focused, targeted measure that the people of the country understand that we're not opening a panyard here, we're not doing this, but we are focusing on a product called cultural tourism, if you want to call it that. And that is part of what is missing in the approach. And I have a feeling, if I can just end, basically because of being in cabinet, but I don't have personal knowledge, if your plan is not one that finds favor with the leadership and those at the top, you will not get the funding and you will not get the support, and you may have all the plans, but if you don't have the money, if staff the funding, it's just not going to happen.
Well, Dr. Hussain, I want to thank you very much for coming on the program and joining us. There was actually a lot more to ask and a lot more to get into, but unfortunately we couldn't do that this morning. But I want to thank you very much for your time and for the conversation. And in the future, and I'm predicting that very soon, we will have you on the program again to continue the discussion as things unfold. But thank you very much, sir, and best of luck.
No problem, yes, and I will come back. I like to speak to Karen, and I learn a lot from her as well. So let's do it, because the country needs this.
I agree with you.
Definitely.
I agree with you very much so. Folks, Dr. Roger Hussain joined us on Talking Point this morning, and he will be joining us again very soon. But let's break for news on the hour here on WESN, and when we return, the callers, well, join us this morning and give us your thoughts on the latest happenings here in our beloved country, that is Trinidad and Tobago. Stay tuned.
7 is out, all day is in. WESN News on the hour.
In this season, we talk more about health, wellness, and everything in between. I am so excited to share with you everything about health and wellness so that you can design the life that you've always dreamed of. Join me here on What's Up Doc.
What's Up Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
Is it politics? What is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit? Yes. What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive, it is not rehabilitative.
We the police officers, we are professional and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole, it's for all of us in public.
If you live with someone who's tested positive for COVID-19 and has to self-isolate at home, take care of them from a distance and reduce their movement around the house. Give them space, a designated space, and open those windows. If you have to be in contact, mask up, both of you. If you work, stay home from work and don't go out. Not even to the grocery or pharmacy. And remember, no visitors allowed. Limit the contact to limit the spread.
The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
Welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN, the content capital. I'm Keaton Shaw, joined alongside Sean Michael Small and Karen Nunes to share with us via Zoom. We were just joined by Dr. Roger Hossain. If you're now joining us, the initial conversation surrounded the resignation of Eugene Tia from the investigative committee and the Prime Minister making the decision to now scrap that committee and implement a 3-member commission of inquiry. And then we had the conversation with Dr. Roger Hossain in relation to our current state of the markets, reflecting off of the global situation that is impacted by the Russian-Ukrainian war. And what's interesting is that he said we need to remove the subsidies. We actually do. The country cannot afford it, and by his calculation the debt to GDP ratio is roughly 93%. Call in now and join us on Talking Point. Give us your thoughts, share with us your opinions. We'd like to hear from you. Add to the conversation. 623-9376, 622-9338. The numbers are on your screen. Good morning, caller from Digger Martin.
Hi everyone, good morning. Thank
Good
you.
morning.
Great interview, thanks. We're seeing Mrs. Nunes Teixeira twice this week.
Yes. They asked me, by the way.
but I'm sorry, can I just go back to something else, please?
Yes.
Guys, you remember when Mrs. Rahim spoke of the civil rights movement regarding vaccinated only in schools?
Mm-hmm.
And the Dawn fake news host also told his viewers that that's how it started with the Jews, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That was his comment. So on Monday, you asked people's opinion on the handling of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
There was the mention of Jim Crowism and
Yes.
apartheidism regarding safe zones.
Yes.
To be clear, Jim Crow laws started after the abolition of slavery in 1865 in the U.S. When we know all that happened, Africans being denied the right to vote, work, be educated, and defying those laws meant violence, being arrested, jailed, etc. Racial apartheid anywhere similarly. Safe zones were implemented globally as a public health concern. And yes, the plausible reason was for the benefit of all in this country as everywhere else, regardless of color, class, and ethnicity. So the condition was to be masked and vaccinated for the benefit of all, but the vaccine hesitant, of course, twisted the whole thing. Lastly, we had no vaccine apartheid here, as was seen in other countries where it was mainly because they did not have the infrastructure like Haiti and certain parts of Africa.
Yes.
So, you know, Jim Crowism, apartheidism, unsafe zones, no. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
caller.
I cannot see for the life of me how we will actually now link racism, because it goes into Jim Crowism as well.
Yeah.
I cannot for the life of me see how we were linking the vaccine mandate and safe zones to racism.
Yeah, and the key point is the extreme extent that Jim Crow laws and apartheid went to, but also the fact that at the end of the day, I can't choose my race. You are judging me based on something I have no control over.
I simply cannot see the arguments in that.
Vaccination, I could choose to not be vaccinated and then not partake. Remember, schools were not made safe zones.
Yeah. Anyway, we have a call on the line now from Tobago. Good morning, caller. Good morning.
How are you?
Doing well. Hope you're doing well.
I must say that I very often listen to this station and I learn plenty from it. However, I don't think I am one of the brighter people who call in here. No, we just had International Day of the Woman. We have something called Father's Day. We have Mother's Day. We have Valentine's Day. Could you tell me where the LGBT fits in all of this?
Well, the LGBTQ,
I assume they have their own day as well.
Regardless of that, and thank you. I don't. And why does the caller always go before I respond? But anyway, regardless of what you've just pointed out in relation to the LGBTQ, because they are now celebrated, they are very much now recognized by society, and it's a conversation that you could look forward to one-on-one in a couple of weeks' time. Need I say? I'm previewing that. Essentially, they are still all part of society.
Yes.
And all those days, regardless of what it may be, they are a part of. We celebrate them as well. They're included in everything.
A gay man is still a man.
Exactly.
A gay woman is still a woman.
Exactly. Good morning, caller.
Just to make you note, Mother's Day and Father's Day was a commercial decision made by the Americans.
As well as
so
Valentine's Day.
nothing to do with any...
as well as Valentine's Day.
You know.
As well of any movement.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's not related to any movement.
Another caller on the line. Good morning, caller.
Morning.
Good morning.
To the panel, Mr. Shearer. A quick, I want to congratulate Mr. Shearer on bringing up the point of the shutdown the refinery. We're going to have money coming in based on the price of oil, but then because of the refinery, our refining gone, so we have to import fuel. So that's a pretty good point that we need to recognize. The second thing is, this is very tragedy. People hurting, families hurting, nation hurting.
Yes.
And we politicizing tragedy. I do agree with that, number one. Two, there are so many other things we could do. The third thing is the TTPS equipped to investigate a case like that. Do they have the forensics? Do they have the lab facilities? Shouldn't the area have been cordoned off immediately? Shouldn't document transfer have taken place immediately? All these things we need to look at because it is going to impact on the outcome of the investigation.
Yes.
I also believe that based on the current situation, Mr. Shah might or might not agree with me, but I believe our nation has to see itself if it has to survive in this time. God bless you guys, or you take care. Have a blessed day.
You too, caller. Thank you very much. In relation to the TTPS, I'm constantly hearing of this. My opinion, and I don't know if Sean or Karen would like to add to this after, is that even though 4 individuals died, there's so many conflicting stories. Hopefully, the Commission of Inquiry will outline clearly whether or not there was any sort of negligence, which then in part, there was a crime that took place, there was indeed a crime that was committed, and then perhaps the TTPS gets involved. But I'm not entirely sure whether or not it's the right time to get involved at this point. I don't know if you...
I think, ultimately speaking, here's the thing, right? Technically speaking, you investigate something to see if there's a crime. How you approach the investigation, of course, will be in stages. That, if it's an accidental death, you might not go all in right away. But if there's something to suggest that it was murder, then you ramp it up a little bit more. So, and I mean, not just with regards to Parry, but just in general. So how it's handled is not necessarily straightforward, but they could probably start looking into things from now. Well, but I don't think they would look to lock it down and make a big scene out of it.
I don't think the Commission of Inquiry is just going to get... You're getting so many versions of what happened, the timelines, I think they need to get that clarified. And as so far as any criminal matter, that is not going to be part of a Commission of Inquiry. No, that is never going to be part of the Commission of Inquiry. What can come out of it is if there is found to be some wrongdoing of a criminal nature, then it is then that perhaps the matter could be sent, whatever it is, to the DPP. But it is not an inquiry into criminal wrongdoing. It is an inquiry into what went wrong, what should have been done, and ultimately a learning opportunity to ensure that as we go forward that these errors are not made, and if some people are liable, then they pursue their action in the civil courts.
Good morning, caller from Digger Martin.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Shah and Mr. Small, and to you, Karen. Good morning. And as we celebrate yesterday, Women's International Day, I want to thank all the women who basically put Trinidad on the map and contributed to the development in Trinidad, including you, Karen. We can't get away from
All right,
that.
thank you.
No, the other thing I want out of that Commission of Inquiry, I want a woman on it. You know why I want a woman on it? The gender gap. And then we will get another perspective from a mother. 4 men died. So I need a woman on that. We have too much talented. And whilst we were celebrating International Women's Day, we were giving out awards, right? National awards. And we had some outstanding women. And I want to particularly identify Jean Miles, where the politicians, the men folks, you know what they did to her? They damaged her. They castigated her. And I thought yesterday would have been an ideal day because she stand up against corruption and she was a strong woman. They should have given her an award posthumously. I can't understand how we treat women. We continue to ignore women in a lot of kind of way. And to that extent, you might be Hulsi Bagan, we call Okasipo, they stand up against some of the men in this country. And more particularly, it's an indictment on a political party. I go and have a nice morning.
Have a nice day. I don't think it's an indictment on any one particular political party. I think every political party played a role.
But is it that she was victimized because of her gender or because of her position? We very rarely see any politician step out from the party line.
I think we often conflict position and gender, but that's an entire debate. Let's not get into that. We have a call on the line from Tobago. Good morning, caller from Tobago.
And good morning, gentlemen. How are you this morning?
We're doing well. We hope you're doing well.
Very good. Thanks for asking. And Karen, it is so good to see your smiling face this morning.
Thank you.
I want to say, first of all, that I respect the caller from, I think it's Diego Martin, the young lady. I respect her opinion on the whole Jim Crowism and apartheidism situation. I believe I'm the one that actually brought that forward, comparing that to Safe Stones. And I appreciate, of course, you gentlemen's opinion on that also. The point I was raising with that was more towards the covert agenda that is usually embedded or can be drawn out of these sort of measures. So even while on the surface, the overt statement is always something that appeals to people, the safety of the people, for instance. We must invade Iraq because there's weapons of mass destruction there. And every American citizen who wants to give up their rights to be protected from what has happened on 9/11. But what was the covert agenda embedded in that and the lies that came out of that? Jim Crowism, apartheidism, good European people, white people that are not in themselves racist, that are made to feel as though they are now being protected by these laws. These laws are for your protection. It's not just to oppress the black people, but it's to protect you from them, because if they're not free and so forth, and then they come and invade you and want to rape your women and so forth. This is what was the covert agenda and the statements being made during Jim Crowism. It made the white people feel safe, so that they did not just oppose those laws; they felt safe with those laws. So the same thing with the safe zones now, and if we saw what was happening during COVID, there was this separation now between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated, and those two now began to go at each other.
Caller,
when you impose these, go ahead.
No, I don't mean to cut you. Please make your point, but we do have other callers waiting.
I can appreciate that. I mean, other people call and make very, very long statements, and you don't interrupt them. I understand that I'm going against the grain here. So I will then defer to you then. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Have a good day, caller. I really apologize that you see it that way.
We have interrupted other callers before. It all depends on when other...
I truly apologize. I hope you don't see us in any way going against your point, caller, but it's so unfortunate that is your opinion in relation to cutting you. But let us not talk any longer. Let us now introduce the caller from Shogunas. Good morning, caller.
Morning, caller.
Hi, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Hi, yeah. In the past, we had a coconut industry, we had a citrus industry, we had a cocoa industry, we had a Trinidad government rail, we had a Coral River Dam, we had a Petrotrin, and we continue to shut down everything. So I would like to know how a devaluation and a diversification will fix these things. I would like to know how a devaluation and diversification will bring a draft MOU for foreign direct investor and put in a company like Atlantic LNG. And when we look at the philosophy of Sir Arthur Lewis, who probably was a Trinidadian who lived in St. Lucia and won a Nobel Prize, he espoused that countries can never aspire to become developed countries unless they aspire to become industrialized nations with high-paying quality jobs and industrialize their effort with the industries they have started. So when we have all of these things just shutting down, simple things like rice, sugar, cocoa, citrus, the government rail, investment like the racetrack, the dam, and just keep shutting down like Petrotrin. And now Pontlitas is becoming a Rust Belt gradually. What are we doing for diversification? What are we doing for devaluation to put these things right? And what are we doing to follow the philosophy that Sir Atal Lewis espoused that brought him a Nobel Prize?
Yeah. All right, Colin, thank you for your point. Thank you very much. And I can only say that I hope that we learn from the lessons of the past and not repeat the mistakes that we made.
Just with regards to devaluation, one, it would make wages for foreign investors, foreign businesses cheaper. We've seen that the power of that in Southeast Asia. And two, it would make the balance of trade. It might bring it back into actual balance because exports will be more viable and incentivized. Imports will be more expensive and
yes, but all that is theoretical, though.
I know it's theoretical, but I mean that was one of the points that Dr. Hussain made was that.
But Sean, that is the problem. That one of the arguments about the import is that we import so much. 86% of our food is imported.
Yes.
Even in the manufacturing sector, the so-called manufacturing sector, they really, what do? They really tin this stuff here. And so that what they're saying is that our import, what we import is, if it's going to go up in price, in the end of the day, that the benefit we would have gotten from a devaluation would be lost.
We have a call.
So that there are arguments against.
Karen, hold on. We have a call on the line. We have a call on the line from Shigonis. Good morning, caller. Good morning.
I fail to see what is the conflict of interest in this appointment. The fact that the minister, as an attorney, represented an individual cannot be a conflict of interest. If it was a traffic matter, would that have been a conflict of interest? Let's suppose it is a conflict of interest, and the minister has reclused himself, and the cabinet make a decision. Would that be okay? So I don't know if I missed something. One of the things I find strange about it, they say represented for some fraudulent matter, but nobody is saying what is the result of it. At least I haven't seen it. If the result of it is
I haven't seen it either.
That would be a good reason not to appoint him.
Yeah.
Second, we have this thing about, I hear your guests talk about he support closing down the refinery. I have explained to you that nothing wrong with the refinery was the gas and liquid plant, and they got rid of that. And I don't understand his point. But when next time you talk to him, try and find out his reasons. Any questions, gentlemen?
No.
As usual.
No, but I will make a comment. The first point you made, the first point you made, I agree. Here's the thing. I didn't see a conflict of interest either. If we were to go through the archives of again, I say lawyers representing politicians or any political affiliation individual. I mean, how is it going to look? But apart from which, where I saw the opposition's point is in the response that Mr. Tia gave in relation to his withdrawal. I think that in itself kind of helped the argument of the opposition.
But I think the caller, again, he's right, because how Mr. Tia responds did not indicate any connection or favor to necessarily to Stuart Young. I think again,
but that's why I said he failed to address that.
He himself could be as a sign of I don't want to be involved in this puppy show.
He failed to address that.
Sean,
thank you, caller, for responding.
It doesn't matter whether he's connected to the minister. The question is, do you want someone who's going to be objective and transparent? And
yes.
You are going to respond in that manner.
No, I know.
It shows that you take things personally, and you don't want someone with those qualities sitting on a board where you require objectivity in the discussion and resolution of the government. That to me is the problem. Not whether he used Stuart Young, but his own response said. And we very well know in this country that many, many matters go unheard, not for the public to hear, and we question the outcome. As you already mentioned, AV drilling is a good example. And had not the whole issue with the firearms with Stanley John done that investigation, he probably would not have known the extent of that well-oiled criminal enterprise, as he called it. So there's a lack of trust. This is an issue of trust and confidence of the public, not an opposition issue, because I have a feeling there are a lot of people who do not support the opposition who support a commission of inquiry.
No, but Karen, my point goes back to, and you could say 2 wrongs don't make a right. If the conflict of interest or the lack thereof was at all to nothing, yes, Mr. Tia might have revealed himself as being a less than adequate candidate for the role. But how he did so was by the way to the genesis of the situation. So if he did not mishandle his exit in that manner, then potentially we would have had someone who was more than capable of being on the panel.
And I would say one thing, having been on the inside, there are a lot of things that we in the public do not know that are the persons outside of in the political arena are privy to. So you just can't make a judgment based on what Karen, they can say or cannot say.
The caller,
anyway, I don't
the
want
caller
to
was correct to identify. Whenever an accusation is made, but no definite statements are made on the accusation, he was caught up in a matter.
It would have been...
That is also lack of transparency.
It would have been very good on the part of Mr. Tia to not make that comments about the subservient to the shenanigans of... Hold on, Sean. It would have been better if he did that. Rather, it would have been best if he actually made a comment on the conflict of interest. It would have been better if he addressed the issue.
I am not debating that point. I am saying that 2 wrongs don't make a right.
Any calls coming in?
No more. And just because he has shown himself to be in the wrong does not necessarily make the accusation right either.
We're not arguing whether or not the accusation was right.
But that is the point I am trying to make. So by trying to refute what I'm saying, you are trying to refute the point I'm trying to make.
Well, perhaps you should have been better in communicating your point.
If I wasn't interrupted on multiple times by my co-host.
You were interrupting Karen many times when she was making a point. But I would just like to say, so yes, the interruptions, be very vigilant of that. To Mr. Radwan Lambamba, we do apologize to you, sir, if you think that because we did not like the point that you were making, which first of all, I will tell you that you are wrong. I understood to a certain degree what you were trying to state in relation to Jim Crowism and the vaccine mandates and safe zones. I understand to a certain point, but what you also need to understand is that it's not a matter of 30 seconds or 2 minutes. I interrupted you, asking you to make your point. Yes, go on, but there are other callers on the line. And if you're disappointed because the opinion is that we didn't share in that, sir, I really am sorry. That is not the case. In no way were we trying to punish you for your point, and we are very much open to the opinion and the conversation. All we did was simply because at the time and the fact that we had other callers waiting, I interrupted you to only ask you to please, get to the point. So, Mr. Lambamba, I see that you've commented. You've commented this morning saying that you're disappointed. Well, we do apologize.
The key is he wasn't interrupted to stop. He was interrupted to hasten, which has been said to other callers before. It's all based on, do we have calls right behind, or do we have a little bit of leeway because we don't have anyone in mass control telling us we have a call right away. So if we can, we try to give time. If we don't have time to give, we ask to be faster, or in some cases, Keaton has cut. With regards to this scenario, however, I think there are practical considerations and you're only comparing it on one perspective. There is just the fact about the actual numbers of death and the actual numbers of vaccinated and unvaccinated in that regard, and the fact that all countries were going into this thing with no past experience and managing something like this.
Furthermore, sir, you pointed out the lady from Chaguanas. The lady from Chaguanas was brief in her points.
Diggo Martin.
Diggo Martin, also in relation to the point you're making on 30 seconds, you were beyond 30 seconds, yes. You were beyond a minute. And the fact is, the lady made her points. She made 3 points. And your point was going beyond a minute. Again, we have no problems with your point. We have no problems with people wanting to contribute. But all we ask, and we will try our very best to gauge it, be considerate of time.
I think a lot of callers don't realize, and we know this from experience, don't realize how long they are on the phone.
Also, we're getting directives from our directors, and it's always a bit difficult to juggle because we want to give people time to make their points. But anyway, folks, that's it for this morning. Because of time, I will thank Ms. Karen Nunes Teixeira for her contributions once more. We look forward to having you on the show again next week for continued commentary and analysing latest. On behalf of my co-host, Mr. Sean Michael Small, never a dull moment on the program. Sean, thank you very much. This has been Talking Points on the Content Capital. Take care, keep well, and we'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.